We have to redefine what our neighbor is. Our neighbor just isn't the person that lives next door to you. Your neighbor is any being on the planet. So we expand our point of view and realize that we live in a neighborhood, that we want to turn into a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and that can only happen through love and compassion. So when you take all of this that I'm saying into self-reflection, and you're doing your own spiritual work of self-love and appreciation via meditation and prayer, introspection, contemplation, what happens? You become spacious. You can actually listen to someone that doesn't share your point of view. And you can go, that's really interesting. Peace and riches blessings. I am Michael B. Beckwith, the host of Take Back Your Mind. Peace and riches blessings to all of you, and welcome to Take Back Your Mind podcast. I am your host, Michael B. Beckwith, the founder of the Agape International Spiritual Center, and your host right here on Take Back Your Mind. So as I reach into myself and reach out to you and say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are, in whatever time zone you may be in, be aware that we are transcending time and space by the right use of technology so that we're all here together now. And time and space is dissolving because time is the measurement of the distance between objects and the measurement of a duration of a thought or a perception or a paradigm we might be living in, and we experience those thoughts, perceptions, and paradigms in time. But when we break free from that, that is, we realize through prayer, through meditation, that we're at the very center of the universe, center of the cosmos, center of the heart mind of the infinite, and that circumference is nowhere, then there's no distance, spiritually speaking. And when we come to an awareness that we can break free from the thoughts and the incessant points of view and opinions and positionalities and perceptions, we no longer experience that thinkingness, is what it's called, or mentation. Time stops, and you come into the now, the flow motion, the zone. So I'm inviting you to take back your mind, to let go for a few moments. Remember The Outer Limits? Used to be a program on television called The Outer Limits, where they would say, for the next hour, we have control of your mind. And they would go on with that. Well, so for the next few moments together, let me have your full attention. Have no distractions, or you can be aware of distractions without being distracted by them, and come into the timelessness as I have the opportunity to share some inspired thoughts on the subject of bridging divides with compassion, and how can we love our neighbors in spite of fundamental differences. I think this is a very important topic, primarily because over the last few years, there's been an increase in polarization. The hate-sphere on the social media and internet and things of that particular nature has seemingly increased. And with the coming out of the lockdown of healthy people and jabs and political perceptions and election year, sometimes that appearances of the divide through polarization seems to increase. And so I thought it was a good idea to just talk a little bit about bridging that appearance of a divide. And so one of the things I remember sharing during the lockdown of healthy people is living in a question. And that question is, how can we continue to love individuals that we disagree with? Now, this was extremely important within individuals who profess a spiritual point of view or a spiritual practice or are a part of a spiritual community that speaks to the oneness of all people, all sentient beings, oneness with the planet Earth, oneness with nature, oneness with each other. And there seemed to, at that time, and continuing up to this moment, be challenges in loving individuals that we disagreed with. And so I invite us always to ask the question, how can I stay in love with individuals that I don't share their opinion? I disagree with them. Now, if you ask that question, you're opening yourself up to loving regardless of whether you like someone's position or not. Now, when the instinctual survival animal aspects of ourselves come into play, we end up feeling very defensive. We end up feeling put upon. We end up feeling offended by other people's opinions because our lower nature is in operation. But when we begin to ask the question, how can I love in spite of someone's opinion about whatever it is, who one's voting for, what party a person is in, whether they believe in the governmental jab or whatever the case may be, if you really ask that question sincerely, you'll begin to be guided by the angels of your higher nature. It may or may not change your point of view where the other individual is, but you will not take offense, nor will you deify them simply because they have another point of view. You see, there's an old saying that it is just as offensive to take offense as it is to give offense. So oftentimes people have these little landmines in their awareness that are unexploded. And when someone says something they don't like or disagree with, that landmine explodes and they take offense. And they don't realize that taking offense of somebody else's opinion is almost just as offensive as giving offense, you see. So part of our spiritual nature is that we're able to stay in love regardless of someone else's opinion. That's a high order, particularly now when things are so intense. And, I just came back from being out of the country, and I noticed that when watching the news, I was in Norway, was totally different than watching the news in America. Watching the news in America, America is like a very censored country. You have a couple of news stations that kind of say the same thing, but from different angles. They act like they disagree with each other, but they're within the same paradigm. When you go to other countries, they have all these point of views about a subject matter. It's not like, you can turn on the stations in America and you know exactly what Fox is going to say. You know exactly what NBC is going to say or the other stations. They're not going to go outside of their paradigm. When you go to other countries, it's different. It's like there's more freedom in people's expression of points of view. Now, I'm just saying that to say that oftentimes individuals' opinions and their points of view, it's not even theirs. It's a part of the malicious hypnotism of the media that just speaks to particular issues in a particular way, and people actually think they have an opinion. They don't have an opinion. They're actually just picking up their opinion from something they're seeing on television. You see, no research at all. And so they're actually taking offense and being triggered by a hypnotic spell that's been planted within them. Ask the question, how can I stay in love with individuals even if I don't share their point of view? Because we live on a round planet. I know there's some flatliners out there, but even if you do believe in a flat earth, we're all on this round earth together, so we really can't take sides. We have to live in that expanded question so that then we're guided by the angels of our higher nature. And what is that? Wisdom, love, peace, joy. You're actually able to sit down with somebody that you share a different point of view with, and you start to understand what it means when you hear that old scriptural reference, love your neighbor as yourself. Now, there's some different dimensions of that. One, who's your neighbor? Now, today, our neighbor is anyone on the planet. We're all connected technologically through YouTube and the internet and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and computers. Our neighbor, we have to redefine what our neighbor is. Our neighbor just isn't the person that lives next door to you. Your neighbor is any being on the planet. So we expand our point of view and realize that we live in a neighborhood, that we want to turn into a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and that can only happen through love and compassion, you see. So one, we expand the understanding of neighborhood. It's not just the individuals living on your block. It's not just the individuals living in your city, your state, your nation. It's anyone on this planet. You can be anywhere in the planet within 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 18 hours by flight. And so technology has dwarfed time and space. So I was just passing through Allison in Norway and a couple of other countries to get back home to the United States. Met beautiful people everywhere that I went. They are my neighbors, you see. The second level of neighborhood of that particular statement is love thy neighbor as thyself. Now this has some nuance to it, because you can only love your neighbor as thyself if you love yourself, not from an egocentric point of view, but as you begin to have a deep sense of self-love and appreciation for what the Creator has created, for what has manifested as the image and likeness of God, or an outpicturing of love and beauty and intelligence, another name for the presence that's never an absence. As you really do enough inner work, and there's a really deep awareness that who you are and what you are is an emanation of the only life that there is, and there's a deep sense of love that is there. When there's that deep sense of love for oneself, as I remind you once again, not egocentricity. I love myself. No. That which the presence has created as you. What's born from that is a greater sense of compassion. I remember a number of years ago, I was in meditation. And I want you to think about something for a moment. You know, there's some sounds going on outside the podcast office, cars. There's an ambulance just went by recently. Whenever you hear those kind of sounds, you're going to train yourself to not see them as distractions. See all those sounds as a call for prayer. When you hear an ambulance, you just say, somebody's getting help. They may have a good feeling about them. You hear a car buzzing by, it's a human being driving that car. Release a prayer for safety, that everyone arrives at their destination safely. I'm just saying that because sometimes we hear sounds and we label them noise when we can label them prayer requests. So, a number of years ago, I was in meditation and I was lifted and out of my body, so to speak. I wasn't body conscious. These beings were giving me an education. And one part of the education, they said to me, we want you to be more compassionate. And I was a little startled by that because I kind of have a self-reflective image of myself as being somewhat compassionate. I don't think of myself void of compassion. And so I thought that startled me a little bit. And I said, really? So right after that, there were these 8 little boxes with 8 scenarios of my life that I relived through. I remember going through these boxes, and at the end of the last box, I said, oh my God. And what I was shown was that I was hypercritical on myself. I was not compassionate with Michael. Every little mistake or everything I thought I could do better, I was very critical of him. And so when I went through that last scenario of an experience I had, I realized, oh, I'm not compassionate with myself. I'm not compassionate with myself. Therefore, I cannot be fully compassionate with someone else, even though that's my nature. It was still being inhibited by the lack of compassion upon Michael and the lack of a greater sense of self-love about Michael. And then that became a dimension of my spiritual practice, prayer work, meditation, introspection, self-reflection. So when you hear love your neighbor as yourself, the definition of neighbor expands, and then loving your neighbor as yourself means growing into self-love and appreciation, a deep sense of self-worth, because self-worth is one of the beginning touchstones of spiritual growth, development, and unfoldment, because without self-love and self-worth being activated within one's self, we unconsciously project stumbling blocks, hindrances, obstacles onto the world, which are really the places within us that we haven't accepted ourselves, and we project it onto the world, we project it onto other people, we project it onto what we think other people are thinking about us, and we inhibit our own forward progress. So self-love and appreciation is important in order to stay in love with individuals that we may not necessarily agree with. Now, what are some of the practical steps in being with individuals that we may or may not be in harmony with a particular perception? We have to, as a community, a global community I'm speaking of here, develop the art of listening. It's a lost art. People don't listen to each other anymore. They listen long enough to jump in and then to share their opinion. They listen long enough to see if there's anything that they can attack, anything that they can disagree with, anything they can jump in and share their opinion, and no one's listening anymore. If we're really going to cultivate what is called the beloved community, a kind and just global society, we have to listen to each other. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so it's an indication that listening is extremely important. And again, there's nuance to listening. There's listening to what a person is saying, very important, so we don't try to fill in the gaps with what we think they're saying. We have to actually listen to what a person is saying. And then we listen for what's under the tongue, which cannot be expressed in words. Particularly in the English language, there's a lot of nuance with facial expressions, a lot of nuance in timbre and tone. We listen to what's under the words. So we start to catch the meaning of what someone is saying. Because oftentimes a person will say something, and it can have 2 or 3 different meanings. We can actually paint a picture of somebody based on what somebody has said, and we give our own meaning to it, and they didn't even mean what we're saying they're meaning. It happens all the time. It happens on the internet all the time. Oftentimes I'll say to staff, if there's some kind of issue, don't keep texting because you can't get the nuance of what a person is saying. Actually, just pick up the phone, call the person and talk to them so you can actually hear what they're saying and hear the vibration, the meaning behind what they're saying, not just what's being texted. Because many things, when someone is texting, it's out of context, you see. So we give our meaning to what the person is saying. So we have to re-enchant ourselves around listening, taking a breath, and letting a person finish. It's an art, and it's also a part of spiritual practice. I know over a number of years, it's been a part of my practice, just listening to someone and allowing for a little pause of silence. I'll sometimes just watch myself listen and then pause of silence before I jump in and say something. So I'm actually taking in what the person is saying. Because oftentimes what an individual is saying has way more depth and meaning than the words they're saying. I'm catching the underlying significance of their feeling and what's important to them. And they may be saying one thing that I might disagree with, but underneath there may be some strong meeting points. This person is really interested in peace. This person is really interested in everyone being happy. They're not just interested in just their particular opinion on how that should happen, but they're actually interested in peace or love or compassion or generosity or creativity. But we'll never know that unless we cultivate the art of listening. So here we have some very important aspects to bridging the gap. Compassion, which is a reflection of self-love and appreciation. Deep listening. Expanding our understanding what the neighbor is. Loving the neighbor as oneself. But I used to say years ago, I wouldn't wish some people's self-love on anyone because they were so disenfranchised within their own being. They had very little self-love, and I wouldn't wish that self-love on anyone else. So we have to really cultivate that. Now here's the deal. When you become spacious enough in self-love and appreciation, you know what you'll find? Less and less being triggered. Less and less being offended. You'll be able to hear another point of view without it feeling like an attack on your point of view. Because everyone's point of view is important. Imagine for yourself two things. One, think about who you are right now. What if who you are right now, you were exactly the same person throughout eternity? How would that make you feel? That's called hell. Because there's stagnation, there's no growth, there's no expansion, there's no new ideas, there's no evolution of the soul. You're just the same forever. And then add this. What if everyone was exactly like you throughout all eternity? So you're in a world where you're the same forever and everyone is exactly like you. That's called double hell. It's the hell of an individual not changing and growing, developing and unfolding, having the same opinions they've had throughout all eternity, and then everyone being exactly like them. That's boring double hell. So when you realize everyone's growing, everyone's emerging into their greater yet to be, sometimes you'll share an opinion today. 5 years from now, you may not have that opinion. Look back at some previous versions of yourself. Go back to when you were 13, you're 16, you're 19, you're 21, you're 25. Go back to other expressions of yourself. Do you still have all of those same opinions? Hopefully not. Because somewhere along the line, you've grown through experience. Some of your experiences happen painfully. Some of it's happened through insights and revelations. But I bet you are not the same individual that you were 10 years ago. You're more, hopefully, expansive, spacious, more yourself. So, with that awareness, and you add the compassion piece and the deep listening piece, you're speaking to it, you're having a conversation with an individual that's dynamic, and the very next week might have a revelation and be a totally different individual. So you have two individuals having a conversation, and they can either be triggered, go into the hatosphere because they disagree with each other, or individuals can realize, you know what, we're having a conversation, a dialogue, we're planting seeds, we're listening, and then both people can grow and unfold. You see, that's how we build the kind of world we want to live in. Compassion, as I've described it over the years, is a very high form of love. It is what I call the understanding of the lack of understanding. Meaning, you have compassion. I don't want this to sound condescending, but you have compassion for individuals who might be stuck in a very limited paradigm. Maybe they're bigoted. Maybe they're racist. Maybe they're homophobic. Maybe they're so super nationalistic that they hate people just because they're born in other countries and have different nationalities. And so that's called a lack of understanding. They have a lack of understanding that all individuals emerge from the same source, but every individual is not monolithic. Every individual is not the same. And so we have compassion on individuals who have a lack of understanding. It's a high form of love. It's the understanding of the lack of understanding. That's another version of compassion. So when you grow in that, without being condescending, you have compassion on individuals that you might judge very harshly. Now, of course, there are things going on in the world that, there are people that are enslaving other human beings, sexually trafficking human beings, and pedophiles. There are individuals on the planet that are so distant from their real self and real nature. There are individuals out here operating just from the consciousness of greed and using technology to steal people's information, to steal their goods and their money and to create all kinds of inconvenience. I mean, obviously there are people who are so distanced from themselves that though we have compassion at the same time, we do have to make sure that we are protected from the individuals. I call them our younger brothers and sisters who are sleepwalking to their higher nature. So we're not putting on rose-colored glasses where there are people in the world who want to do you harm or want to do other people harm based on the color of their skin or sexual orientation or religion or things of that particular nature. But we are not to get into the undertow of hate. Never allow someone else to bring you to the level of hate. Don't allow someone else to bring you to the level of such agonizing resentment that you slowly kill yourself. Don't give someone that power. You realize that they are distant from their real self. You can say you can hate the evil deed, but you separate the deed from the person because the individual, as long as they're breathing, has an opportunity to change. That's compassion. And then what happens? You personally don't take offense, even though you don't like what's happening. You don't allow it to go into yourself. So during this time, particularly over the last few years, and increasingly around election time, where families are divided, friends don't talk to each other because individuals are voting differently. But what I've discovered, and I hear people give their rationale about why they're in a particular political party, why they're not in the two main parties, they're in another party, because the two main parties, as has been said over the years, are just two wings of the same bird. When you deeply listen to individuals, underneath, for the most part, now there are people that are brainwashed. Okay, there's a segment that's not really thinking for themselves. But there's many people that have a feeling that they're really voting for the highest and best of all the citizens. Now, of course, there are individuals, just as there are politicians, that are not really working for their constituents. They're working on their own behalf or on the behalf of a certain strata of society, you see. Now, that's true. But the average person, when they vote, They believe. I'm taking away those who are under hypnotic spell of media, and I'm taking away the individuals that purposely are doing something to just benefit a certain strata of society. You take the rest of the people, they're voting because they actually think that that particular candidate or that particular party or that particular senator or congressman or whatever the case may be, president, is actually the best person for the job. For whatever criteria they have. They want the world to be better. They don't want the world to be worse. They want the world to be better. They want more peace. They want more prosperity. They want more safety. They want more well-being, even though individuals may disagree on the how. The what generally is the same. This is the beginning point of bridging a gap. So instead of calling an individual stupid because they're not seeing the world the way you see it, you say they're different. They have a different point of view. They have a different perception. And hopefully they're thinking about you the same way. You're different. You have a different perception, different point of view. But if individuals listen to each other, seeds are planted, dialogue happens, and individuals come out changed. Remember, you don't want to be the same iteration of yourself throughout all eternity, and you don't want every single being to be exactly like you. Can you imagine? You're living with somebody, and they are exactly like you. I mean, everything. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to sit around and finish each other's sentences throughout all eternity? There's no new information. There's no new flow. There's no creativity. There's no new ideas. Boring. I mean, back in the day, the hyper-masculine man wanted his woman that way. Hyper-masculine man would tell the woman how to vote. Go in the booth with them if they could. Back in the day where the hyper-masculine man was trying to control their wife or girlfriend, they wanted them to be exactly a little replica of them. And sometimes men's egos did that with their kids as well. They want their kid to be exact. You got to play baseball because I played baseball. You have to play football because I played football, And so people are maturing now and coming out of that egocentric point of view and letting people be who they're meant to be by God, not who they should be by a parental influence or societal influence. So when you take all of this that I'm saying into self-reflection, and you're doing your own spiritual work of self-love and appreciation via meditation and prayer, introspection, contemplation, what happens? You become spacious. You can actually listen to someone that doesn't share your point of view. And you can go, that's really interesting. I never thought I never thought that they thought that way. It's interesting that they think that way. I don't think that way. But it's interesting that they think that way. Should I hate them because they think that way? Should I cut them out of my life because they think that way? Should I disparage them among my friends because they think that way? Should I demonize them because they think that way? No. I must listen, have compassion, share my point of view. If it falls properly or they can hear me, maybe there's some shift that happens. And we end up living in a world of listeners, people that are listening more than they're speaking. Do you realize that you learn more listening than talking? You already know what you know when you're talking. You already know that information. But you don't know what you don't know. And the only way to know what you don't know is to listen, be receptive, be open, be available. You can still maintain your point of view. But little by little, you're going to grow. You're going to hear something that's, I never thought about it that way. You may keep your point of view, but you don't have to hate the person that doesn't share your point of view. I remember seeing these two individuals. I can't think of their names right now. A black man and a white man. And the white man had come from the Ku Klux Klan aspect of life, and the black man had come from a very black nationalistic point of view here in America. And they were at opposite ends of a pole. And I can remember the white guy saying, in his mind, his viewpoint of black people was that they were violent people. And the black man, his point of view was that the white man was extremely violent. They entered into a dialogue. And the white guy was just sharing his point of view. And then the black guy started sharing all the white people who had done all these heinous crimes in America. The mass murderers and all this stuff. And anyway, at the end of the day, there was a shift in consciousness. The white guy realized that his point of view he had gotten from being in the Ku Klux Klan, and that violence and mayhem was not relegated to a particular race. It was relegated to his race as well, his ethnicity. And the black guy had a shift. Anyway, they became friends to basically share the danger of stereotyping. But that did not come about unless they listened to each other. And they realized that the stereotypes that they both had were incorrect. Black people are not dangerous and violent. They're not monolithic. There are probably some dangerous and violent black people. There's some dangers and violent Asians and white people and Jewish people and Mexicans. But no race has a monopoly on that. You see? But if we stay in our own silos, we can actually fall prey to that which is called prejudice, prejudging someone before you meet them. Prejudice, stereotyping, and bigotry. I think this is at a really high level these days on social media. I was looking at something about someone, and I was watching these people get on and just sharing their opinions about the guy, just breaking him down and hating him, and he was the devil. And I'm thinking to myself, these people had never met this man. They've never had a conversation with him. They never had tea with him, never had lunch. They don't even know him. Yet they have this visceral opinion about him based on something they heard and their perception about what they've heard, and they have developed this perception of him, and they're silly enough to put their ignorance online. They're saying in substance, I am stupid, I am ignorant, let me put this on the internet. The internet and social media I sometimes call the hate-osphere, because people actually will share their ignorance by defaming somebody and disparaging somebody they don't even know. And it's just become like normalized. People think they just have to share an opinion. No, you don't. You don't have to share an opinion. You don't have to. Unless you've done research, you sat down with the person, you know the person, you had experience with the person, be quiet. Just put a heart or a prayer emoji and say, God bless everybody, and keep on moving. You got to ask this question. Is what I'm about to say, is what I'm about to text, is what I'm about to email, is it going to add more peace to the world? Is it going to add more love to the world, more harmony, more joy, more prosperity? Or is it going to add more animosity, more separation? Just ask the question. And as soon as you hear, oh, if I say this, this is going to add more fuel to the fire, don't do it. Even though you might be addicted to it, you're going to get some likes. You're going to get people saying, oh, yeah, I agree with you. Grow up. Listen to your higher nature and don't do it. We live, as I began this solo show today, we live, not everyone, in a time of intense polarization. from every issue under the sun. Who you're voting for, what the government is doing, do you like it or dislike it? Are you for the jab? Are you against the jab? We live in such intense polarization at times. Do you want to add to that? Or do you want to create an atmosphere for love and compassion and joy? Just ask yourself, what kind of world do I want to live in? I personally live in a very beautiful, wonderful, magnificent world. It's not the world everybody lives in. I live in a good world even when there's a lot of traffic. People think I'm crazy, but I try not to become anxious over something I can't control. So when there's a bunch of traffic, I can't control that. You know how much good music I listen to? Sometimes really good podcasts in traffic. It's like, oh, I got time to listen to this, that, or the other. I'm not going to be mad because I turn around the corner and there's a whole bunch of cars. I can't do anything about that. So why do I want to tear down my immune system by constantly being upset every day over traffic? No, I'm not going to do that. Say, whoops, traffic. What am I going to listen to on the way home now? I got some good Earth, Wind, and Fire. I got some good Stevie Wonder. I got some good audio books. And next thing I know, I'm at home too soon, right at a good part of the book. Oh my God. I was listening to a suspense novel the other day, and it was good. The way the storyteller was telling the story really good, and I was all interested. Next thing I know, I'm pulling into my driveway. So, oh no, I got to sit in my car for a moment. I wish I had some more traffic. You know, sitting there, oh wow, that was a powerful conclusion to that story. Anyway, this is all a part of taking back your mind. You can let it all get all clumped up in things that you can't control, or you can make a choice to live in a different world. I'm reminded of an experience I had. I was in Santa Monica, and I was at a particular high-end, I call it the high-end, energetic doctor I used to go to, and anti-aging. And so anyway, my thought was to go home, change my clothes, and then head over to Agape, which was in Culver City at the time, and do my Wednesday evening service. So I had it all planned in my mind. I'll finish my appointment with this man, go home, and then shoot to Agape. But when I turned onto Olympic, it was a parking lot. There was no way I was going to get all the way home and then get back to Agape on time. So I'm sitting there in this traffic, and I take a deep breath, and I release a blessing, and I say to myself, I may have said it out loud, all of these cars are being driven by one mind, one life, one intelligence. There's nothing but order and harmony here. And then suddenly I went into this, you might call it an altered state, but I call it a real state. It was a state of awakening. And I could feel my oneness with all of these beings in the car. We weren't in separate silos of our different automobiles. It was this one being having all these different experiences on the planet, but we were all one. And I remember going down the street, down Olympic, and then making a ride on La Cienega because I wasn't going to have time to go home. And I was in this very expanded state, and I went and got to Agape, meditated, and went and did the service. But from start to finish, my consciousness was so expanded. My sense of oneness with the ineffable presence so real. Traffic couldn't steal it. I had a different experience. Now, I'm not saying everyone needs to do that or can do that, but you can start paying attention to when you're allowing something you can't control to determine your mood. Just as a part of spiritual practice, that's all. It's not like shame, you're bad because you got caught up in an emotion. No. Just being aware. When you get anxiety, anxiousness, or even anger, about something you have no control over. Traffic is always one of them in LA. I think it's funny because people know, they already know they're going to run into it at a certain time of the day. They already know it. So if you already know it, are you just going to be angry? Just because you already know the traffic's going to be there. So like, I turn the corner, I'm just practicing being angry. I'm going to be angry before I even get there. Oh, there's traffic. Human beings, we are funny. We're hilarious. Try a different response. Oh, traffic. I can listen to some good music. I can listen to a great story, an audiobook, a great podcast. I can listen to Take Back Your Mind by Michael Beckwith. Or I can just be silent, watch my breath, and drive and bless all of these cars. I can bless all of these inhabitants and hold the space that everyone arrives home safely. You can do that too. You can rail against it, or you can say, this has given me an opportunity to bless. The same way that I invited you earlier. If you hear an ambulance going down the street, we teach our practitioners here at Agape, that's the moment you stop and do a silent prayer that someone's getting help. Help is on the way. And that right where that individual is, the presence of God is. You can do the same thing in your car. So, I think we've covered a lot of material today regarding bridging the gap of seeming polarization and separation, bridging the divide with compassion, love, listening, expanding the concept of neighbor, self-love and appreciation. Take back your mind. Ask, what kind of world do I want to live in? And then represent that world vibrationally. That's going to take spiritual practice. That's going to take sincere meditation, affirmative prayer, study, sometimes using the life visioning process, and being in fellowship with open-hearted, high-minded people that are on the same quest of awakening that you are. The divide is an illusion based on perception and thought. Because as I have seen over and over and over again, there is one magnificent being called by millions of names, revealing itself as each and every one of us. We are one in the spirit of the living, loving intelligence and beauty that governs all creation. We are one with each other. Let's act like it. Peace and richest blessings. Have a beautiful and wonderful day. Over the years, I know you've heard me mention the word meditation, probably in every talk I've ever given, every class. Meditation is going to come up because that's fundamental to spiritual growth, development, and unfoldment, because it allows you to separate yourself from the mentation, the thinkingness, the perceptions, the points of view that you often identify yourself as. It allows a level of spaciousness to occur so that you can realize you're not all those thoughts that are passing through your awareness. You are the awareness. And once you realize that you're not what's passing through, but you are the space that things are passing through, it's called awakening. Leads to levels of enlightenment. So we're going to have a moment of meditation. And what I want you to do is to close your eyes right now, let your feet be firmly on the ground, have your hands upward in a sign of receptivity. Just take a breath here. Release. Give yourself permission to be right here without thinking about where you're going or what you're going to do when you leave this present moment. And I want you to think about, bring into your mind's eye, your heart space, someone that you love so dearly. It can be a newborn infant in your family's life, a deep friendship. But when this person comes into your awareness, what bubbles up in your awareness is pure love. You can even go to how much you love the living one, the infinite presence. Just feel into that love. Let your attention be in the feeling tone of this love. Now, as you're paying attention to how much you love the infinite presence, or how much you love this infant that's in your life, or this being, with every breath you take, allow this love to expand. This love, this circle of love, to not only embrace this one individual, or the presence of God itself, but to all the beings in your circle, people that you know. Let it just, whether you like what they do at times or don't like, just allow this tonal quality of love to surround them right now. Place them at the center with that special being that you love so much. Let this love, with every breath you take, expand to all the beings in your neighborhood, whether you know them or not personally. Let it expand to all the beings in the city that you live in. You don't know all these beings, but they're in your field of awareness right now. Love. The state that you're in, the nation. Love and compassion. Let's embrace the entire planet and all sentient beings, beings with consciousness. Let's let this same love that you have for that little infant, for the presence of God itself, flow from your inner awareness to all the beings on the planet. And just bask the earth in this love. So that all of these beings, all of Mother Nature, all the animal kingdom, the mineral kingdom, the winged kingdom, the four-legged kingdom, the creepy crawling kingdom, are all in your field of awareness, and this awareness is one of love. And all of this is in your field of awareness. You're not just in the world. The world is in you, and the world is being blessed by your loving nature and your loving intentionality. Be in the quietude of your love. Be in the quietude of loving to love right now. O infinite Spirit, great God of the universe called by multiple names, how great thou art. I'm aware that your name, your nature is love. The total givingness without any sense of withhold. And the word that is spoken right now is a word of love for all beings, for our entire planet, that everyone is our universal and global family. As we meditate upon this, the world is changing because we are changing for the better right now. It is done, and so it is. Amen. Thank you for taking a few moments of your time, sacrificing those moments, meaning the word sacrifice, one of the meanings for sacrifice is to make sacred. So you've just made sacred 5 or 6 moments of your life to bless the planet and all sentient beings. Thank you for that. Have a beautiful day. Peace and blessings. I truly hope that you are enjoying Take Back Your Mind podcast. The Take Back Your Mind podcast is sponsored primarily by the Agape International Spiritual Center. In other words, everything that you see in terms of the staff that puts this together, the editing, the equipment, all of this is sponsored by our Agape International Spiritual Center. So if you are enjoying the podcast, I'm inviting you to support the sponsor. Support Agape. Simply go to agapelive.com and make a donation. And say in the donation that you are supporting the podcast. It allows us to keep broadcasting. It allows us to keep putting these magnificent moments together with these wonderful people that I get to interview. We keep having the possibility of updating the equipment that's necessary and providing the wonderful content that many of you are writing in and saying, I really love the podcast. Support the podcast. Support the sponsor. Agape International Spiritual Center. agapelive.com. You can also text to donate. You can text the word give to 424-321-6243 and put podcast so that we know that you're really supporting this wonderful podcast. Our secondary sponsor is Adaptozen, Adaptozen. This is my superfood greens. It's nutritionally dense because I teach spirit, mind, and body. We want our body temples to be healthy. So one of the products is my superfood greens. You can go to NutraRise.com. Those 3 little lines you see, you hit those 3 little lines and you'll see Adaptozen. There's 2 products, my superfood greens and a product called Elevate, which are organic mushrooms for your health. You can put both in your smoothies so that you have main ingredients for the health of your body temple. These are our sponsors. Primary sponsor, Agape International Spiritual Center. Secondary sponsor, Adaptozen. I want you to be healthy. I want you to be wise. Circulate and share. Peace and blessings. Your time is very valuable, so I want to thank you for lending us your ear and participating in Taking Back Your Mind. If you want to submit a question for the question of the week, please submit it to podcast@michaelbeckwith.com. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please submit a review and let us know your thoughts. Stay on top of current episodes by subscribing to the podcast so that you'll receive alerts and not miss one single episode. And feel free to share this podcast with all of your friends and family. And until we meet again, take back your mind and you will take back your life. Peace and blessings.